January 2026 hasn't even arrived yet. But something unusual is already happening inside grocery stores, and most people haven't noticed it. Shelves aren't empty, alarms aren't ringing, yet inventory is quietly thinning across hundreds of locations. According to internal supply data, some everyday items are already down 35% to 80%, without signs, warnings, or announcements. The most unsettling part? It's not meat or milk that's vanishing first. It's the ordinary items families rely on every single week. I've been tracking these early signals closely. And by the time the shortage becomes obvious, it will already be too late to react. Number 10. Premium coffee beans. Coffee isn't just a beverage. For millions of households, especially those over 40 or 50, it's a daily ritual tied to stability. The sound of the grinder, the smell of fresh beans, the quiet moment before the day begins, these routines matter more during uncertain times. And that's exactly why premium coffee beans are one of the first grocery items quietly disappearing. What most people don't realize is that the global coffee supply is breaking down at the farm level. Brazil, the world's largest producer of Arabica coffee, recently suffered a devastating drought farmers described as the scythe of the sky, wiping out vast areas of coffee trees. When the drought finally ended, it wasn't relief that came, it was frost. Frost kills coffee plants faster than heat, and once a tree is damaged, it can take years to recover. At the same time, Ethiopia has seen floods destroy entire growing regions. In Central America, labor shortages mean ripe coffee cherries are literally left to rot on the ground because there's no one to pick them. This isn't a temporary hiccup. It's a structural collapse happening across multiple regions at once. Shipping only makes the problem worse. Global transport costs continue to rise, and even when coffee exists, it often can't move. As winter approaches and coffee consumption increases, roasters are forced to make hard choices. The first products they cut are premium and single-origin beans, Ethiopian, Kenyan, small-batch Colombian varieties, because they're harder to source and easier to drop quietly. For longtime coffee drinkers, this isn't just about switching brands. It's about losing something familiar and grounding. One viewer put it perfectly, it's not the caffeine. It's the taste I've had for 20 years. You don't need to stockpile coffee like emergency rations. But if your mornings depend on a specific bean or roast, keeping a few extra sealed bags stored cool and dry isn't panic. It's protecting a routine before prices surge and choices disappear without warning. Number 9. Jasmine and basmati rice. Rice is one of those foods people almost never think about, until it's suddenly hard to find. It doesn't feel urgent, it doesn't look fragile, and it doesn't trigger panic. But when the last bag in your kitchen runs low, something shifts. Rice isn't just food. For millions of families, it's routine, memory, and cultural identity. What's happening now is something the global rice market hasn't seen in decades. India, the world's largest rice exporter, has extended export restrictions, removing tens of millions of tons of jasmine and basmati rice from international trade. That single decision sent shockwaves through global supply chains. At the same time, Thailand is experiencing prolonged flooding, while the Mekong Delta, Southeast Asia's rice bowl, is facing the worst saltwater intrusion ever recorded. Closer to home, American farmers are abandoning rice fields in favor of soybeans, which are less risky and more profitable under extreme weather conditions. Add China's massive bulk purchases to secure its domestic supply, and the math becomes brutal. When a country of nearly 1.5 billion people buys aggressively, the rest of the world feels it immediately. The result is already visible. In others, prices are rising while only lower-grade blends remain. One longtime consumer wrote, "I've eaten this rice for 40 years. Am I really supposed to switch now?" That question captures the emotional weight of this shortage. Rice. Substitutions aren't simple. You can tell a South Asian family to replace basmati with long grain any more than you can tell an Italian to swap pasta for instant noodles. Taste matters because memory matters. This isn't a call to hoard, but if jasmine or basmati rice is a daily staple in your home, keeping an extra 5 to 10 kilograms stored properly isn't panic buying. It's acknowledging reality and protecting something familiar before the market forces a change you didn't choose. Number 8. Vanilla extract. Vanilla extract looks harmless. A tiny bottle tucked into the back of the pantry, used a teaspoon at a time. But behind that small bottle is one of the most fragile supply chains in the entire grocery store. And when vanilla disappears, it doesn't come back quickly. About 80% of the world's natural vanilla comes from a narrow region in Madagascar. Vanilla isn't a crop you can rush. It's an orchid that must be hand-pollinated, then nurtured for 3 to 4 years before producing usable beans. That means when disaster strikes, the damage isn't limited to one season. It wipes out multiple future harvests at once. In recent years, Madagascar has been hit repeatedly by cyclones, flooding, and extreme rainfall, destroying thousands of vanilla farms. Secondary producers like Uganda and the Comoros simply cannot scale fast enough to replace that loss. For years, the global market relied on emergency reserves to smooth out shortages. Then came another blow most shoppers never heard about. A major fire destroyed a large portion of U.S. vanilla reserve stock. The buffer meant to stabilize prices during bad harvest years. At the same time, demand keeps climbing. Coffee chains push vanilla lattes and cold brews year-round. Protein shakes, yogurts, cereals, and ice cream all rely on vanilla. Then comes the holiday baking season, when household demand spikes all at once. The result is already visible on shelves. Smaller bottles, higher prices. And quiet downgrades from pure vanilla extract to vague labels like vanilla flavor or natural flavor. That's shrinkflation and quality erosion happening side by side. Vanilla has become so scarce that gram for gram, it has traded at prices higher than silver during peak shortages. This isn't a call to stockpile cases of vanilla. But if your household bakes, makes desserts, or uses vanilla regularly, keeping 1 or 2 extra bottles of pure vanilla extract while it's still available is reasonable. That tiny bottle isn't just flavor, it's foresight, before a quiet shortage turns into sticker shock. Number 7. Cooking oils. Cooking oil is one of those items you don't think about until the moment it's gone. You crack an egg, heat the pan, reach for the bottle, and realize your kitchen just came to a stop. That's why oil shortages hit differently than most food gaps. When oil disappears, entire meals become impossible, not just inconvenient. The pressure on cooking oils has been building quietly. Sunflower oil, a staple across many households, has been hit hardest due to prolonged conflict in the Black Sea region. Fields, processing plants, and export routes that once supplied millions of liters each month are now operating at a fraction of capacity. As sunflower oil vanishes, food producers and restaurants pivot to substitutes, and that shift pushes stress onto canola and olive oil supplies that were already stretched. Now add timing. Demand for cooking oil peaks during the holiday season, exactly when transportation slows, energy costs spike, and factories struggle with staffing. Restaurants and snack manufacturers respond by stockpiling raw oil to keep production lines running. You don't see that scramble. You feel it later when shelves develop gaps and prices jump overnight. Olive oil faces a different threat. Extreme heat and drought in major Mediterranean growing regions have reduced yields, while energy costs make pressing and bottling more expensive. The result? ES&T just higher prices. It has fewer mid-range options and more frequent out-of-stock signs where familiar brands used to be. Running out of oil isn't dramatic, but it's deeply frustrating. You can salt vegetables, fry eggs, or cook staples your family depends on. It turns a stocked pantry into a limited one in seconds. Oils store well when kept cool, dark, and sealed. If your household cooks regularly, keeping 1 or 2 extra bottles of the oil you actually use ISNT, extreme, it's practical. Because when shortages tighten, oil isn't replaced easily. By the time you notice the shelf is empty, everyone else noticed it too. Number 6. Frozen vegetables for many households, especially in colder regions. Frozen vegetables aren't a backup. They're the only reliable source of vegetables for months at a time. When winter sets in, fresh produce becomes expensive, limited, or poor quality. That's when the freezer aisle quietly becomes your garden. And right now, that garden is far more fragile than it looks. Behind a simple bag of frozen broccoli or spinach is an incredibly tight system. Vegetables must be harvested at the exact right moment, transported immediately, washed, cut, blanched, frozen, and sealed within hours. The freezing lines must run nonstop. Cold storage facilities can't lose power. Refrigerated trucks must arrive on schedule. If even one link breaks, the entire batch is lost. Extreme weather has been breaking those links more often. Floods delay harvests. Heat waves reduce yields. Winter storms shut down highways. Power disruptions threaten cold storage. When that happens, freezer aisles don't thin slowly. They empty fast. Many shoppers have already experienced this through partially canceled online grocery orders or walking into stores where their usual brands simply never came back. Another quiet change is brand erosion. Long-trusted names disappear first, replaced by smaller or unfamiliar brands at higher prices. Packages shrink. Prices rise just enough that most people don't notice week to week until they do. And the scariest moment isn't no vegetables at all. It's opening the freezer, the place that used to feel safe, and realizing it's nearly empty. Frozen vegetables matter because they protect nutrition. When diets slip toward nothing but bread, pasta, and canned meat, energy drops and health suffers. For older adults especially, vegetables are essential for digestion, immunity. When your freezer has space and prices are reasonable, adding 1 or 2 extra bags of the vegetables you already eat is enough. Some households go further by freezing fresh produce when it's on sale. Either way, the goal is simple. Make sure winter meals, Dan. Tea turn into all carbs just because the supply chain stumbles at the coldest time of the year. Number 5, canned soups and bone broth. Canned soups and bone broth are easy to dismiss as convenience food until the day you actually need them. When you're sick, exhausted, snowed in, or simply don't have the energy to cook, these are the items that carry people through the hardest moments. That's why their quiet disappearance from shelves matters more than most shoppers realize. The pressure on soups and broths is coming from several directions at once. Meat prices are up, vegetables cost more to source, and even the metal used for cans has become significantly more expensive. Add labor shortages at processing plants and rising transportation costs. And suddenly, a product that used to be cheap, abundant, and boring becomes fragile. One bad winter storm that shuts down highways can wipe out an entire soup aisle in a single afternoon. Many people don't notice the shortage until they're already vulnerable. You're sick, your throat hurts, the weather is bad. And the last thing you want to do is cook from scratch only to realize your pantry is empty. Viewers often share the same story. I didn't think about soup until I needed it, and then it was gone. That moment is frustrating at best and genuinely stressful at worst. Bone broth, in particular, has become a quiet staple for older adults and anyone focused on easy nutrition. It's warm, gentle on digestion, and provides protein and minerals without effort. But because it relies heavily on meat inputs and long simmering processes, it's especially sensitive to supply disruptions. When producers have to cut back, broths and specialty soups are often the first items reduced. This isn't about buying cases or clearing shelves. It's about realism. If soup or broth is what you rely on during cold days, sick days, or low-energy evenings, keeping a small buffer of a few extra cans or cartons makes sense. These foods store well, rotate easily, and become invaluable exactly when you don't have the strength or time to improvise. Preparation here isn't dramatic, it's compassionate toward your future self before winter and shortages collide. Number 4, baby formula. There is no grocery item that creates fear faster than baby formula. Because this isn't about convenience or comfort, it's about a child's survival. Adults can switch foods, babies cannot. And when the specific formula a baby depends on disappears, an entire household can be thrown into crisis overnight. The most dangerous shortages are not the standard formulas. They're the specialized and sensitive types. Hypoallergenic, gentle, lactose-free, amino acid-based formulas are always produced in smaller batches. It makes them the first to vanish when factories slow down or supply chains tighten. Winter is especially risky. Plants shut down for maintenance, transportation is delayed by weather, and import rules become stricter just as demand remains constant. Parents who lived through past formula shortages remember how fast panic spread. One parent's comment captures it perfectly. "I drove to 6 stores and found only 1 can, and it was NT, the kind my baby needs." That moment isn't inconvenience, it's terror. And it's becoming more common as manufacturers struggle with rising ingredient costs, packaging shortages, and tighter regulations. It's important to be clear and responsible here. All infant feeding decisions must follow pediatrician guidance. No substitutions. No homemade recipes. No experimenting. That rule doesn't change even in a shortage. But preparation is not the same as panic. If your baby relies on a specific formula, waiting until the last container is half empty is risky. Keeping 1 or 2 backup containers, especially during colder months, is not hoarding. It's protecting your child against disruptions you cannot control. Formula has a defined shelf life, which makes rotation straightforward and safe when done responsibly. Shortages don't announce themselves. They show up quietly. 1 empty shelf, 1 missing brand, 1 delayed delivery. By the time everyone notices, options are already gone. For parents, preparation isn't fear-driven. It's an act of care. And when it comes to babies, being early is always better than being desperate. Number 3. Nuts and nut butters. Nuts and nut butters are easy to overlook because they're small, familiar, and always seem to be there. But in reality, they're one of the most concentrated sources of energy and nutrition in the entire grocery store. When supply chains tighten, foods that pack protein, healthy fats, and calories into a small space become incredibly valuable. And that's exactly why nuts are quietly becoming harder to secure. The problem starts at the farm level. California, which supplies the majority of America's almonds and walnuts, is under relentless pressure from water shortages and extreme heat. Farmers are being forced to make impossible choices: water high-value crops and let others die, or abandon orchards entirely. Once a nut tree is removed, it can take 5 to 7 years to replace it. It's not a short-term disruption, it's a long-term supply loss. Elsewhere, pistachio-growing regions are suffering from prolonged drought. While pecan farms in the southern U.S. have been hit by flooding and storms, as yields fall, the food industry responds quietly. Snack brands reduce nut content. Granola bars change recipes. Premium nut varieties disappear first, replaced by blends or fillers that look similar but don't offer the same nutrition. For many people over 50, nuts and nut butters aren't just snacks. They're essential survival nutrition. They require no cooking, store well, and provide steady energy for people who can't always prepare full meals. Peanut butter, in particular, becomes a lifeline during busy, stressful, or low-energy days. Demand spikes make the situation worse. Holiday baking, winter snacking, and rising meat prices all push consumers toward nuts as an alternative protein. Prices rise fast, and once shortages appear, shelves don't refill evenly. One week, everything looks normal. The next, your usual brand is gone. Preparing here doesn't mean buying everything in sight. Nuts freeze extremely well, extending their shelf life and protecting quality. Nut butters rotate easily if you already use them regularly. Keeping a modest extra supply isn't panic. It's recognizing that compact. No-cook nutrition becomes priceless when food systems strain. When shortages hit, it's always the most useful foods that disappear first. Nuts are far more useful than most people realize until they're gone. Number 2, Greek yogurt and high-protein dairy for many people, especially those over 50. Greek yogurt and high-protein dairy aren't trends, they're daily nutrition anchors. Easy to digest, quick to prepare, and packed with protein. These foods quietly support muscle strength, bone health, and energy when heavier meals aren't appealing. That's exactly why disruptions here hit harder than most shoppers expect. The dairy system is under a slow, tightening squeeze. Feed costs for farmers continue to rise. Extreme weather reduces milk yields. And processing plants are struggling with higher energy bills and labor shortages. Add packaging constraints, cups, lids, and foil seals aren't as simple as they look, and production becomes far more fragile than it appears from the shelf. The warning signs are already visible if you're paying attention. Favorite flavors are in stock one week and gone the next. Large tubs disappear first, replaced by smaller containers at higher pounce prices. Brands quietly reduce variety. These changes, Dan T, trigger panic because they happen incrementally, but for people who rely on these products daily, the disruption is real. Greek yogurt, skyr, kefir, and cottage cheese are especially vulnerable because they require consistent. When milk supply tightens or plants slow down, these higher protein products are often the first to be cut in favor of more basic dairy items. The result is fewer choices and more empty spaces where staples used to be. Shelf life complicates things further. With only 2 to 3 weeks before expiration, many shoppers hesitate to buy extra. But that's also why short gaps in supply feel so disruptive. If your morning routine depends on one of these foods, even a brief shortage forces an unwanted scramble. Preparation here isn't about stockpiling. It's about awareness and flexibility. When your preferred brand is available, picking up an extra container or two can smooth over gaps. Having backup options, regular yogurt fortified with protein, cottage cheese, or whey powder, helps maintain nutrition without stress. When food supports health rather than just hunger, its disappearance is felt immediately. Number 1. Aluminum. Aluminum foil isn't food, yet it's one of the most critical items in the entire kitchen. You don't notice it until it's gone, and then everything stops. Roasting, baking, covering leftovers, freezing food, lining pans, even basic meal prep suddenly becomes harder. That's why aluminum foil shortages are far more disruptive than people expect. What's happening behind the scenes is simple but serious. Producing aluminum requires huge amounts of electricity, and rising energy costs have forced multiple smelters worldwide to slow production or shut down entirely. At the same time, foil mills rely on specialized European machinery. Replacement parts are stuck in long global supply chain delays. When machines break, production doesn't bounce back quickly. Then comes geopolitics. China, one of the world's largest aluminum exporters, has sharply reduced exports to protect its domestic manufacturing. That decision ripples outward fast. Grocery chains are already reporting declining foil inventory. Shoppers are seeing the first warning sign: shrinkflation. Rolls look the same, but they're noticeably shorter. Same box, same price, less foil. The consequences don't stop at your kitchen drawer. Foil shortages spill into frozen meals, takeout containers, baking trays, and restaurant supplies. When packaging becomes scarce, entire categories of food are affected. Shortage you first notice at home quietly spreads through the entire food system. This isn't a call to panic by cases of foil, but if aluminum foil is part of your daily cooking routine, picking up 1 or 2 extra rolls while shelves are still full is practical. Foil doesn't expire, doesn't spoil, and doesn't take up much space. When it's gone, there is no easy substitute. None of these items disappeared overnight. They faded quietly, one shelf at a time. The mistake most people make isn't panic buying. It's assuming tomorrow will look like today. You don't need to prepare for everything. Just focus on the items your household already uses every week. One small step, taken early, beats desperation later. Before January 2026 arrives, pay attention to what's thinning where you live, because once shortages become obvious, the choices are already gone.